Charlie Kirk, a conservative activist and leader of Turning Point USA, is shot and killed at an event on a college campus in Utah. Tonight, the governor of Utah says the murder is a political assassination.
This is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination.
Thanks for joining us tonight at 7. I'm Curtis May.
And I'm Edie Lambert. This case continues to evolve through the night, but here is the latest. Kirk was shot this afternoon while speaking at Utah Valley University, that is in Orem, Utah. The FBI said it did have a person of interest in custody, but they released that person after an interrogation by law enforcement. Right now, there are still roadblocks near the campus where Kirk was shot, as authorities are looking for the shooter and for more information. Investigators say a single shot hit Kirk in the neck in what's believed to be a targeted attack. They say the shooter wore dark clothing and fired from a roof on campus some distance away.
Now, video shows the moment Kirk's security team carried him away. They rushed him to a nearby SUV to take him to the hospital, and you could see people running. The people who gathered to listen to Kirk speak are now running for their lives in this video. But tonight, the FBI says Kirk was targeted. There was one shot and one victim. And just minutes ago, President Trump released a video shot from the Oval Office addressing the murder of Kirk.
Fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven.
President Trump ordered flags at the White House lowered to half-staff today. The president also issuing a proclamation to lower the flags at all federal buildings, embassies, consular offices, and other U.S. government properties.
People are holding a vigil at the state capitol right now. Dozens of people gathering to remember Kirk. Right now, you can see Assembly Republican leader James Gallagher, and to his right in the pink suit, Senator Shannon Grove. Organizers are calling this a prayer event. People have been calling for unity and an end to political violence in America. We have more about Charlie Kirk. He was 31 years old and a father of 2. He founded Turning Point USA back in 2012. He and his organization were key to President Donald Trump's election victory last year. In fact, President Trump has credited Kirk with galvanizing and mobilizing the youth vote. And tonight we're hearing from more people who attended today's rally.
One student tells us she felt the event wasn't very secure, saying she didn't notice many safety measures. And one couple we spoke with says the loud bang didn't sound like a gunshot, but once people started shouting and running, they knew something was wrong.
We were just talking for a little bit, and then we heard a loud noise. And at first, I didn't think it was a gunshot. I thought it might be like someone, I don't know, setting off like a firework or something. I don't know. But everyone started running, and then we heard people say that they saw blood. And so that's when it started to get scary. So we were running out of there.
It was kind of like a sketchy environment because there was no like metal detectors or anything. Like people could just walk in. And so there were a lot of families there too. But after we heard it, I was so scared. I didn't want to think it was a gun or a shooting. But I realized like there was no way it wasn't going to be that.
Well, Kirk's assassination has sparked shock and concern from politicians and lawmakers to those who followed his organization and those who disagreed with his point of view.
So this past March, Kirk was a guest on Governor Gavin Newsom's podcast. The two talked about criminal justice, homelessness, and transgender athletes in sports. Governor Newsom issued a statement today saying everyone should feel a sense of grief and outrage at this violence. He wrote, "I knew Charlie and I admired his passion and commitment to debate. His senseless murder is a reminder of how important it is for all of us across the political spectrum to foster genuine discourse on issues that deeply affect us all without resorting to political violence." Kirk enjoyed broad appeal with young conservatives especially. Many credit him with bringing young voters over to the Republican Party.
So let's bring in KCRA 3 political director Ashley Zavala. You're here to talk about how Kirk helped shore up support for President Trump and Republican candidates.
Right. When Kirk, did have this big appeal with young voters, but also well-established members of the Republican Party. He had connections at the California state capitol on both sides of the aisle, including his friend, Republican State Senator Shannon Grove.
You know, what happened today to Charlie is sheer evil, but what gives me real peace is that he went around to these college campuses in his entire life since he was a very young person, and he accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as his Savior. And one of the last things that he spoke on this earth was sharing about that love that he had for Jesus and the salvation that he had to thousands of students that were watching him. And so I think that's a pretty incredible way to leave this and go take on the hand of Jesus. But we have lost a great patriot, a great person that just loved the Lord and spoke truth and justice unashamedly and with courage.
On the other side of the aisle, Kirk sparred with some Democratic state lawmakers, including Scott Wiener. But Wiener and Grove today horrified by what happened to Kirk. Both parties essentially saying that this political violence must be condemned and no one should be attacked this way for what they believe in politically.
Absolutely. And you could certainly hear the emotion in Senator Grove's voice. We also saw she's participating right now in this prayer vigil. Talk about his impact on leaders in this state.
Yeah, he was known for engaging effectively in this dialogue on social media. This was not a Republican or a conservative who just sort of sat and broadcasted his thoughts from a room in his bedroom or in his house. This was someone who went to college campuses and he debated students who had different beliefs than he did to try to convince younger voters or to try to educate younger voters on conservative viewpoints, on those political beliefs, on situations, and he was effective. And those videos are many of them have gone viral. That caught the attention of Governor Gavin Newsom, who, as we showed, used Charlie Kirk, had Charlie Kirk on as his first guest of This Is Gavin Newsom, and that episode took off. It had 1 million views, and the governor engaged in this. Many people thought, it was a really different exchange of views between two people who could keep it civil, but still have this sort of heated discussion on those topics: homelessness, transgender sports, and just overall the state of the country.
He influenced so many people, and what influence did he have on bills over the state capitol?
Well, right. After that episode with Governor Gavin Newsom, Charlie Kirk really pushed essentially California's legislature to consider prohibiting essentially transgender athletes from participating in girls' high school sports. This was a proposal that was not necessarily going to be seriously considered at our state capitol, that is dominated by Democrats, dominated by state lawmakers who do not share the viewpoints of Charlie Kirk. But Charlie Kirk asked Governor Newsom, presented for example, state track and field championships. Are you okay with this transgender athlete? Those were not Charlie Kirk's words. Yeah. But are you okay with that? And the governor acknowledged it's an issue of fairness, and that sort of launched this whole discussion at the Capitol. And it was an effect that Charlie Kirk is known for being provocative and for sort of igniting these discussions. The bill was ultimately killed. We did see that CIF did end up changing its systems for the state championship, allowing girls and the transgender athlete who won many of the events to share the podium. And this is still an outstanding issue in California, and one that the governor has said he's still trying to find something that strikes the right balance.
So you talk about the traction, these videos going viral, and even really kind of setting up a new way of having these dialogues. What has the impact been on our state Republican Party?
Right, yeah, it's had a lot. I mean, just Republicans that I've spoken to, or just what I've seen on social media, on Instagram, for example, U.S. Attorney for the Central District, Bill Asalee, he was appointed by President Donald Trump recently. This is a young Republican. Asalee on social media noted that Charlie Kirk is someone who pushed him to get more politically activated. Assemblymember Allie Macedo, she's a brand new 31-year-old state lawmaker at our Capitol. She is a younger conservative, also inspired by Charlie Kirk. Those are just two examples. There are a lot more in the Republican Party that is changing in part because of Charlie Kirk.
Accomplished a lot, just 31 years. Yeah. All right, thank you. And as Ashley mentioned, it was common for Kirk to visit college campuses. In May, he stopped at San Francisco State. This was part of Kirk's American Comeback Tour at colleges across the country. In March of 2023, he was at UC Davis. This visit did spark protests that led to 2 arrests. People accused of painting graffiti on the wall of the University Credit Union Center where that event happened. About 500 people attended that event. And there are Turning Point USA chapters at several campuses across our area, including UC Davis, Stanislaus State, and Sacramento State.
Sac State President Luke Wood posted this on social media. This is reprehensible. We denounce violence. No one should be attacked because of their political beliefs, especially in an environment that prioritizes freedom of speech and freedom of expression. We must see the inherent humanity within all of us.
California Senator Alex Padilla also releasing a statement saying America was founded on the freedom to disagree. Political violence has no place in our democracy. The shooting of Charlie Kirk is reprehensible and sickening. I am praying for him and his family during this time.
And House Speaker Mike Johnson spoke earlier today condemning all political violence. He says it must stop.
I'm just going to state the obvious here. This is detestable, what's happened. Political violence has become all too common in American society, and this is not who we are. It violates the core principles of our country, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our civil society, our American way of life, and it must stop.
In recent years, there has been more political harassment, threats, and violence.
In 2020, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was the target of a kidnapping plot. And in 2022, a man broke into the San Francisco home of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She was not home at the time, but the intruder beat her husband with a hammer.
On July 13th of last year, President Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt while attending a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Then just a few months later, there was a second alleged attempt on the president's life. The suspect in that case went on trial just this week.
And in April of this year, a man set fire to the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. He was home with his family and safely evacuated. And in June in Minnesota, State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, were shot and killed in their home in a politically motivated attack. Another state senator and his wife were hurt on the same night. Utah Governor Spencer Cox condemned the political violence, including today's murder of Charlie Kirk.
He said today that our nation is broken.
Nothing I say can unite us as a country. Nothing I can say right now can fix what is broken. Nothing I can say can bring back Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are broken. We mourn with his wife, his children, his family, his friends. We mourn as a nation. If anyone in the sound of my voice celebrated even a little bit at the news of this shooting, I would beg you to look in the mirror and to see if you can find a better angel in there somewhere. I don't care what his politics are. I care that he was an American.
Former U.S. Representative Gabby Gifford survived an assassination attempt in 2011 while visiting her home district in Arizona. She was permanently disabled. She sent out this statement: democratic societies will always have political disagreements, but we must never allow America to become a country that confronts those disagreements with violence.
We continue to follow the shooting of Charlie Kirk as law enforcement determines who shot and killed the activist. We'll bring you updates on air and at any time on our KCRA3 digital platforms. And be sure to turn on your KCRA3 app notifications for real-time breaking news updates.